Hello, and welcome to the Introduction to Profile. In this video, we'll be covering the background to profile so that you can have a really good foundational understanding of what it is, how it's determined from your chart, and the different aspects of profile. Now, I'm going to give you a heads up. This is going to be a bit of a longer video, but you will get a ton of background information about your human design chart, and it'll probably even answer some other questions that you may have about the chart. So stick with me and let's get to it. So after you've watched this video, this is the introduction video, the background to profile. After this video, you can go watch the video for your specific profile. In human design, there's 12 different profiles, which is basically like there's 12 different personality types or characters in how you show up in the world. And so after you watch this, please go watch your specific one. And if you bought the whole bundle, then you can go and watch the ones for your friends and your family and all that good stuff. Okay, so let's get into it. What is profile? So profile is basically the costume that you're given to wear in this lifetime. It is your personality, both what you're conscious of and what you're a little more unconscious of, more of what other people see you as. So if you've watched the other videos about your design, these are all more mechanical energetics, like how you are energetically designed to operate in a more mechanical way, like your strategy and your authority and your aura type, like your energy type. Those are all mechanics, like how, if someone was going to work on a car or, like know how to drive the car, that is the kind of what you've learned thus far if you're following all of the little that side list of aspects about your specific chart on the download when you download it from my website. Now, profile is pretty different. This is more like the car's make, model, all of the little extras that may come with the car, the color of the car. This is like, it's what gives the car an additional flair, if you will. It's what gives the car personality, right? It's not how the car is designed to work. It's what gives the car personality. So this is what profile does for you in your human design chart. It gives you your different personality. So for example, a 5-1 profile generator is going to show up very differently than a 2-4 generator. Even though their auras are energetically the same, they are opening, enveloping, and designed to respond to the world around them, the actual character, the personality of these two different profiles, these two different generators, are going to be very different. So this profile gives you the really first big nuance in human design. So at first, one of the things is when you first read your profile, it might not seem so much like you. That first number, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, might resonate a little bit more. And that second number, the more unconscious side, you might not have such a connection with. And sometimes you're like, you can see that in yourself, but as you decondition, because so often our personalities can be shaped by our conditioning. So as you decondition and let go of what conditioning you have received in your life that doesn't serve you, decide what you do want to keep, all that stuff, then you start to actually like fit into your profile better. It's like that costume that you were here to embody in this lifetime starts to fit a little more form-fitting, rather than a loose costume, just generic costume. Now you have a more tailored costume. And when I'm saying costume, I'm not meaning that in a bad way. It's not like you're showing up inauthentically. This is your authentic personality. This is the personality that you've been given in this lifetime. It's just a metaphor. Life is full of metaphors. They really help us to understand things. Okay. Okay, so This has been my personal experience. I'm a 5'1" heretic investigator, and as I've been going through my deconditioning process, I have definitely been tapping more into my heretical nature. I have definitely, I've never been a big one for mainstream things. I've never followed a lot of fashion trends or anything like that, which, I mean, if you do that, totally cool. Maybe that's exactly what you're designed for. Maybe you have a 4 in your profile, but that's never been me. And I have always liked to research. And, investigating and research and getting to the bottom thing has been something that I really resonate with. And having an understanding of that 5 and that 1 and how they operate has really helped me to understand myself better and realize, okay, what was things that were coming from other profiles that were in my life and what are things that are inherently me. And it just kind of helps another layer of the deconditioning process. All right, so let's get on to it. So how is profile determined? Where did those numbers come from in your chart and what do they mean? So let's start with how is profile determined? If you notice I'm using a new system here, so I have to the video is like flip flopped. So if I'm like going this way and this way, I'm sorry. I'll figure it all out. Okay, so let's go this way. Let's do this finger this way. There we go. Okay. So if you notice, I have a human design chart right here. How do I don't know how to do this, but right above me, you see it, right? You see it right above me. There we go. You see it right above me here is a body graph so it's the central body graph, right? With our 9 centers, our gates, that the definition that's colored in, and the channels and all that good stuff. And then if you notice on every body graph chart, having a problem, we have 2 columns of numbers. All right, you have your right-hand side column, which is depicted, if you run your chart on my website, it'll be in purple. That is your conscious side. That is the side of your chart that is your conscious side, or we could also call this the personality side. Those two can be interchanged when we're talking about profile. So this is what is imprinted on you at the time of your birth. So the time of your birth is when you have fully exited your mother's body. Umbilical cord can still be attached, and usually is, because you can't really cut it off right away most times, and it's good to let that blood flow for a little bit. But so this is that purple side, the right side. This is your personality side. When the place where the sun, the earth, and all the planets were in our Rave mandala at the time of your birth. And that's also correlates to your body graph, which is in the middle. So all of the purple gates and channels, that is where that comes from. You can actually kind of connect it. Like if you look in my throat center on my 16th, or actually let's do throat center on my 35th gate. So if you'll notice that little symbol with the circle and the dot in the middle, that is the sun symbol. That's like kind of like in astrology, even in astronomy, they depict the sun as that circle with the dot in the middle. And if you notice mine on that right-hand side, I'm so backwards, I apologize. On the right-hand side in purple, that top number, it says 35.5, right? So that correlates with the sun at my time of birth was in the 35th gate, and each gate is broken up into 6 different lines. So it's like kind of like sub-broken up. So at the time of my birth, the sun was in the 35th gate, line 5. And if you notice the 35th gate, if you look in the middle at my body graph, the 35th gate is right there in the throat center on the right-hand side at the top. The only gate that I have activated in the throat center on the right side. So, so this is where the personality starts to come in. That 0.5 means the fifth line, and it's from these lines, not the gates, but the lines of the gate where your profile is determined. Now let's look over on the left-hand side, all right? On the design side. So the design side when you run your chart on my website will be depicted in the pale pink and on the left-hand side. Yes, left-hand side. So if you notice, if you look up to the top, sorry, I have puppies. They're going to be coming in and out because they're crazy. Hi, Haldor. Okay. But the design side, if you notice, look back up at the very top, that same sun symbol with the circle and the dot in the middle, mine says 22.1. So that means that on the design side, when my design okay, let me back up for a minute and explain where the design side comes from. So we said the personality side comes from at the time of your birth. I may have to lock everyone outside. Hang on one second. I'm going to pause this. All right. I locked the dogs out. All right. So the personality side is imprinted at the time of your birth when your body has fully exited your mother's body. The design side is imprinted at 88 degrees of the sun before the time of your birth. So, you have let's say the sun's right here in the sky at the time of your birth. When the sun is about 88 degrees before the time of your birth, that's when your design side is imprinted in your body, if you will. So this is very important, that 88 degrees, notice it's not quite 90. And this is about 88, 89 days before the time of your birth. And yes, even if you're a preemie or you're a C-section baby, all of that stuff, it really doesn't matter. The universe, I believe that everything happens for a reason. And the universe kind of already knows beforehand. You can take that or leave it and filter it through your belief system. But this is what was given to Uru Hu, who downloaded all of this human design information from who he called the voice. And this is what the voice said. It knew. The universe knew. So 88 degrees, whether you came on your due date before, after, 3 months before, if you were a major preemie, or whenever it was, even a scheduled C-section, it doesn't matter. The universe still knows. So I have my design sun, which is also you could call it the unconscious sun, located in the 22nd gate, line 1. All right. So we have 22nd gate, line 1. And the 22nd gate is found down in my solar plexus. It's that top gate that is highlighted for me. And if you notice, mine, I actually have the 22nd gate show up a few times in my chart. So it's actually colored in half pale pink and half purple, because I have it show up both on my design and personality side, but in different areas. For me, on the personality side, Jupiter was in the 22nd gate at the time of my birth, but then on the design side, the sun was in the 22nd gate, 88 degrees before the day I was born, or 88 days before the day I was born, 88, 89 days, it's somewhere around there. Okay, so you also I have all of this written down on the far left side of the slide, so you can always pause and kind of take this in a little bit more if you need to. Okay, so now where does profile actually come from, these numbers? If you notice at the bottom of the left-hand side, I have a big 5/1. This is how we write profile. If you notice, your personality line comes first. So my personality line is a fifth line. That 35.5 is the fifth line / 1, which the 1 comes through the design side of my chart, that pale pink, the 22nd point 1 number. So that's where profile comes from. It comes from the first line, the sun line, in your personality side or your conscious side, that purple column, very first number, and pulls, and then that second number comes from the design side, that 0.1 or that first line. So that's how my profile is determined. Now, let's say that we had a personality that was like 26.4 and a design sun that was, like 45.2. Let's do point. Hang on. I want to do ones that actually like show up and not just throw random things out there. So we'll just flow with that. So like if we did like 24.2, then your profile would show up as a 4/2. All right. So all you have to remember, I know that was a long-winded way of saying that, is just look at the personality, that very first line, the sun line, take that number, and then take the design sun line and put that after it. So that's where it comes from. So take a look at your chart and make sure you have an understanding of that. Pull up your chart, look at your profile, and then look at your personality sun line and then the design sun line. Remember, those are the numbers after the decimals. Okay, let me make sure that's all I wanted to say there before we move on. Okay, always checking my notes. Okay, all right, yes, I wanted to say more about this. Now, you may be asking yourself, okay, why are we just looking at the sun line? Like, why don't we look at the nodes, which are the little U's upside down and right side up, and the moon and all the different planets? Like, why don't we look at those lines, the numbers after those decimals? This is because 70% of your imprinting comes from the sun. So the sun has the biggest impact on your personality and your design, your conscious imprinting, and your unconscious imprinting. It has the most impact. And this is because 70% of the neutrinos that are passing through us every day first pass through the sun. And that's because the sun is the largest object in our immediate vicinity. Here on Earth, the sun is the largest thing for us, the thing that has the most impact on us. I mean, think about the world that we live in. If we didn't have the sun, it would affect almost everything. Not quite everything, because not quite everything is dependent on the sun, but at the same time, everything is interconnected. So the neutrinos that are coming from, like, through just the universe, 70% of those pass through the sun before they hit us to imprint us, both at the time of our birth and at the time that our design is determined. So remember, birth is your personality or your conscious side. It's that purple column. And then that 88 degrees before the time of your birth, that is your design or unconscious imprinting, the pale pink. Okay. Okay, so this is also why, kind of to like connect it with astrology, most people know what their sun sign is, right? Like me, I'm a Gemini. I don't, so that's another kind of like layer to that. If you think about most people don't know all of their other astrological points and what, like what sign is rising and what their moon sign is and the this and the that and the other. They know their sun sign, and that's because the sun does have the biggest impact on us. And coming back to specifically human design, each of the 64 gates, you might be also wondering, like, well, okay, why is it that the line matters and not the gate? Like, why is it that the gate doesn't have as much of an impact on our personalities and how our costume that we wear in the world, and how come it's the line? And that's because each of the 64 gates have their own energies, but they do not show how you show up as an actual personality in this world. So each gate has its own energy, it has its own flair, but it's the lines that actually determine those two lines, your personality and your design sun lines, determine how you actually like personality wise show up in the world, not so much mechanic wise. So and let's see. And it is these lines that do that because no matter what gate the line is in, no matter what gate your sun is in at the time of your birth and the time of your design, those lines, there's only 6 different lines, right? It's always going to have your sun line, the gate that your sun is in your personality and design, it's always going to be point either 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, or 6. Those are the only options. All right. So, and these lines actually have an overarching theme that impacts our behavior. Okay, so to explain that more, let's go into the hexagram structure. All right, like where these lines come from, because you might be saying, okay, Mallory, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm very confused. So let's dive in a little bit deeper to the hexagram structure. Okay, so here's our hexagram structure. As a reminder, the hexagrams come from the Chinese I Ching. Remember, human design pulls from many different modalities, both ancient and modern. And the hexagrams come from the ancient modality of the Chinese I Ching. If you want to know more specifically about that, you can go research that on your own time. It's a little beyond the scope of what I'm specifically talking about here. But these hexagrams is what correlates to the gates in your human design chart. So all those little numbers within each energy center and the numbers that are in the columns on either side of your body graph. Okay, so this hexagram that you're looking at right here is the 10th gate. And you'll see why I chose this specific one in a little bit. So stick with me on that. But here you'll notice that there are 6 lines, right? And you see some of them are solid and then some of them are broken up. If you notice in this one, for the 10th hexagram, there are 5 that are solid, and then that 3rd line is broken up. And this speaks to the duality of the universe, or as Ra, the founder of human design, calls it, the biverse, because we live in a binary. Remember, I always say, like, human designers is this or that. You know, it's one side of the coin and the other side of the coin. So if something doesn't resonate with you, think of the opposite, and that may resonate with you more. So the solid lines are the yang lines, containing more of the masculine energy. And the broken line, so in this case, it's that 3rd line, is the yin lines. And this has more of the feminine energy within it. So that's all I'm really going to say about that's like the yin and yang here for now, because that is a whole other explanation that is way beyond the scope of this specific video and doesn't really necessarily pertain as much to profile. All right, but just know that that's why some of them are solid all the way across. That's the yang lines, and some of them are broken. That's the yin lines. Okay. So, and then each gate is broken up into a different combination of yin and yang lines. So this 10th gate that you're looking at right here, this is like the pictogram of the 10th gate. It has 5 yang lines and 1 yin line. So the hexagram is then further broken up into 2 sections called lower trigrams and upper trigrams. So if you notice, I have it kind of marked on the slide here. The lower trigram are lines 1 through 3, and the upper trigram are lines 4 through 6. On the left-hand side, you can see I numbered each of the lines, and if you notice, the lines actually 1 starts at the bottom and then moves up to 6. So this is where those in the previous slide, here, let me come back over to the previous slide. you notice we have our 35.5, right? So that's talking about what this fifth line would be in the 35th hexagram. Now remember, this is not a picture of the 35th hexagram, it's a picture of the 10th hexagram. But you can look up what the 35th hexagram looks like if you so desire. Okay, so let's see. So what this means is that okay, so let's see, hang on. Okay, so if you notice, again, that first line, it's actually builds on itself. The first line is the foundation of the hexagram. We're going to kind of go over into this overarching thing of lines. So remember how I said before, the reason we don't look at the gate for the personality, we look at the lines, is because the lines have an overarching theme on all 64 hexagrams or 64 gates. In human design, we use hexagrams and gates interchangeably. Okay, so if you notice, the line 1 starts at the bottom of the trigram and works its way up to line 6. And lines 1, 2, and 3 are part of the lower trigram. These lines all focus more on the trigram itself. They are more internal lines. And then lines 4, 5, and 6 are upper trigram lines, and they more externalize what that hexagram or that gate's energy is all about. So the first line, let's go through each one of the lines and talk about the overarching theme. So the first line is your foundation line. All first lines are foundational lines of that specific gate, but that is the overarching theme of first lines. Foundation. All right. The second line is the natural expression. Oh, wait, what is happening? Okay. That second line is the natural expression of that gate. So how that naturally just expresses itself. The third line is the mutation or evolution of the gate. The fourth line fully externalizes that gate and shares it outside of itself. The difference between the second line and the fourth line, the second line is the natural expression of the gate, but it's kind of like still within itself, like do, just la. And the fourth line is actually literally pushing that energy more out. Now, the fifth line universalizes the energy of the gate. And the sixth line actually goes beyond the gate itself. It's looking more towards the next gate, like the next step, or even beyond the gate across the channel when we're dealing with the body graph or the entire circuit itself. That, again, going into channels and circuits is a little beyond the scope of this. So we're going to just move on from there. But I wanted to show with you. So Ra always has a metaphor of a house to explain this. So let's check that out. So when we're looking at a house, you can't see my number 1 because my face is in the way. But if we're looking at a house over here, we have our foundation at the bottom, that kind of like big brick at the bottom. That's the first line. That is the foundation of the house. The second line is the first floor windows. They're open. People can look in and see what the natural expression of that gate is. The third line is the stairs. It's like the transition going from being more internal to a more externalized view of this gate. And then the fourth line is the foundation of the house. The foundation of the second story. All right. It's like, okay, like now, like let's start to put it out there a little bit more. Let's build upon that lower trigram, the lower first, second, and third lines. The fifth line is kind of at the top story looking out and share like shouting things from that second story, like thinking of the king or the queen standing on the balcony, externalizing and sharing the message of that hexagram. And then the sixth line is on the roof, going, I don't really care so much about the hexagram that I'm a part of. I'm looking beyond that. I want to talk about what's beyond that, the next step, the next evolution, the next reiteration. All right? Okay, so now let's get into the 10th gate and how this plays in with everything. So back to our original hexagram image with a little bit added on. So, so as I said earlier, the 10th gate is actually called the gate of the behavior of self. Excuse me. And this is where our profile keynotes come from. So whether you have the 10th gate or not activated in your body graph, that means like colored in, either in purple or pale pink, it does not matter. It still has an effect on you, and it is the foundation of where the keynotes of the personalities and kind of the personality types come from. So let's explore that. So the sixth lines within the 10th gate are the behavioral lines. And these are the keynotes that explain the 6 different behaviors of self and how we show up in the world. So it's through your strategy and authority that the 10th gate empowers you to live out your full potential as yourself and truly loving who you are and who you are designed to be. When you come to a space of embodying this, you empower others to love themselves. So this is the basis of the 10th gate. It is a huge self-love gate. And when we truly step into our own power and our own self-love and self-acceptance, absolute magic happens for ourselves as well as those around us, because they realize that there is a different way of showing up in this world. So this gate provides a great ripple effect of self-love throughout the world. And don't you feel like we could all use a little more of that? So in my opinion, when each of us truly loves our unique self and accepts and sees ourselves for who we are and operates as we are designed to operate, then we are also able to see others the way that they are. Whether they are operating from the not self or they're operating how they are designed as a 9-center being, we can still see how they're showing up. Maybe see if they're very caught up in not self. See the pains and the frustration and where the anger is coming from, or the bitterness and the disappointment. And we can see all that and hold space and love for them, because we have already come to a place of peace, of love, and self-acceptance of who we are. Awakening is not possible without self-acceptance and self-love. Foundational. Mic drop. Okay, so let's get into these 6 lines. So these are the 6 themes of our 6 lines. And then remember, profile uses 2 of the lines. So each profile is going to have 2 different lines connected to each other. And again, you can check out your own video specifically about your profile to get an in-depth explanation of how those 2 lines in your profile interact with one another and how they show up. Okay, so the first line, remember, first lines are always our foundational lines. So in the first line of the 10th gate, this is the investigator. It is the personality of the investigator. This is the people that are really like to dig in and figure out the answers to things. Like, they will research, they will dive in, and really want to get to the answers, to the whys, to all of that stuff, to do the research, because ultimately what they are actually seeking is a solid foundation. Because first lines feel secure in themselves, in what they are doing when they have that solid foundation. And that solid foundation comes through investigation. Now, because they are so investigative, this is inherently an introspective line. Remember that lower trigram, lines 1, 2, and 3? These are all more internal lines. They're more introspective lines. And this one, that first line, even more so, because you need to take the time to dive in, to really investigate, to kind of be in your own space, have your own time. Sorry if you can hear my puppies scratching at the door. They're like, why can't we come in? Okay, and get to the bottom of things. Because again, once you're able to get to the bottom of something, and then you have this secure and solid foundation. And first line profiles, if you have a first line and a profile, it's all about seeking that solid foundation so that you can build upon that solid foundation. First lines do not do well with a foundation made from like a house of cards or whatever, something that's not super, super strong and solid. So if you are a first line being, it is important for you to take the time to research, to investigate whatever it is that strategy and authority calls you to dive into, and allow yourself the time and the space to do that, because that's where your solid foundation will come from. The not self keynote of this line is insecurity. When you feel insecure as a first line being, it means you do not have a solid foundation. So creating that solid foundation is the most important thing. Insecurity can also drive those with a first line to seek outer authority. And after they've investigated the outer authority and they've introspected and kind of processed all that information, they can usually become a great authority, outer authority for others themselves. Now remember, ultimately at the end of the day, everything lies within the inner authority. But when you're first learning something and you're first researching and diving in and investigating, you have to learn it from outer authorities first, and then you put it through your own filter if whatever the information is applies to you or not. For example, I am, as I said earlier, a 5-1. I have a first line in my unconscious profile. And I've always been a researcher. I love to research. It lights me up, only on things that really I care to research. If I don't care to research it, I'd be like, meh, I don't care. But so I have gone through, listened to all the outer authorities, like human design as an example. And then I allow that to filter through my own lens and allow my own inner authority to tell me what is actually applicable to me personally and what is not. Okay. As Ross says, the very nature of a hexagram and the very construct itself cannot survive without a solid foundation. The first lines, they can be very empathetic and take on the energy of the other in order to understand the other. That's another way on an emotional level that they investigate. Because the first lines also usually really like to study behavior. I know that's true for me personally. They watch how people act to understand what does and does not work. First lines can also be a little bit of a chameleon because they learn that they need to act differently in different situations in order to maintain their security. And remember, security is the foundation for the first line being. They must have a sense of security by building a strong foundation. This may also, that chameleon-like can be a little bit more for first line personalities. So if you have a 1 at the beginning of your profile, that first number of your profile is a 1. Whereas the first line designs may need to have a more secure physical foundation. And I know that's true for me. I'm pretty much consistent with my personality, especially as I've deconditioned. But I cannot tell you how much more in alignment I feel now that I own my own house. I have my own space that I know is mine and I can make mine, and I have that solid foundation. Another big kind of thing that can come up for first lines is feelings of inferior. I can't say this word. Inferiority. um, this will usually show up because they have not given themselves the time to really establish the correct foundation by investigation. First lines tend not to move super fast. They tend to take them a while to build that foundation, and that is okay. Having a secure and solid foundation is the most important thing to a first line, especially when they have an open heart center. Because remember, the not self theme of open heart center can just feel like you're unworthy, just in general. No matter what you do, you're just unworthy. There's never enough. You've never done enough. You've never done enough research. So it's important to have that solid foundation and be aware of an open heart center if you have one, and making sure that you're not further investigating because you feel like from a place of unworthiness. And also in my own life, again, I can speak to what I can speak to, right? But as a first line being, until I started really diving into human design and understanding myself, I never gave myself the privilege to research, to dive in, to build my foundation, because I always felt like I was unworthy of doing that. That it was like, I did never allowed that to be what word am I looking for? A priority for me to do so that I could build that foundation. I was always trying to build my life on like clay. You know, clay is slippery and it'll like fall out from underneath you. It's not a solid foundation if you're going to build something upon it. Okay, so strategy and authority will determine what is correct for you to dive into and investigate and what is not. You know, there's many things like being an auto mechanic and knowing how to fix my car and do that kind of stuff holds no interest for me. My authority, my sacral center says like, ugh, no, thank you. So I don't do that. Human design, on the other hand, I'm like, oh, this is amazing. Fuck yes, I want to learn more about this. It lights my sacral up. It's going, do more of this. Build the foundation, build the foundation, build the foundation, investigate, investigate, investigate. So knowing that it is okay to spend the time on what your strategy and your authority is saying yes to you to do, and you are in knowing that you're worthy, and it is okay. It is worth your time to dive in and investigate this when your authority says yes. This is something that we need to dive into and build a solid foundation around. For a first line being, it's also very important for you to focus on one thing at a time. Squirreling can happen all the time because there's so many different things maybe you want to investigate. So that's when you really have to become intentional and say, okay, what is the most important thing for me to prioritize investigating at this time that can build the foundation, and then in the future I'll be able to investigate these other things that also hold interest for me. And that's been a huge lesson for me personally, like going like, okay, like what do I want to focus on right now? Because I got major overwhelm and had major ADHD symptoms of like boop, you know? So really, and saying like, it's okay. I don't have to know everything about everything right this second. I'm going to focus on this one thing at a time. Because when they're trying to investigate too many things at once, because the mind is telling them that they need to know all the things right now, it can be extremely overwhelming. As I said, it can lead to ADHD, cause a lot of anxiety. And the solid foundation can never be made because it just creates this cycle of anxiety. So the biggest takeaway for first lines is that they build their solid foundation through investigation. Okay, second line, moving up the trigram. So second lines are the naturals. This is, remember, second line is the natural expression of the energy of that hexagram, right? When we're talking broad. So let's talk about what this means for the 10th gate, the gate of behavior, and where our second line profile terminology comes from. So second lines are simply naturals. They don't really know where their gifts come from. They're just blessed with whatever it is that they are gifted at, and that's exactly how they're designed to be. There is no justification that they need. There is no reasoning like why they're so good at this, that, or the other thing, whatever their zone of genius is. They're just kind of meant to be in their own world, doing their own thing that comes naturally to them. And as they do, others will recognize their gifts and call them out to use those natural gifts and talents. So the terminology for the second line is called the hermit. And that's because they're just kind of want to be left alone to do their own thing in their own natural way, in their own natural expression. It can be very uncomfortable for second lines to have someone come into their aura and want something from them. It is only the correct calls from other people outside of them that the second line will come out of their cave and want to share their talents and gifts. And again, most of the time, like if they're not receiving the correct calls, where their strategy and authority is saying, oh yes, that call, that is something that I need to do. I have the energy and the space to share my gifts and talents with XYZ. Okay, so second lines, again, remember, this is still lower trigram. Lower trigram, all three, first, second, and third lines tend to be more self-absorbed. They're very much in their own process. And this isn't in a bad way or a shameful way. It's okay. It's how they're designed. They tend to be more oblivious to the fact that others are watching them. And especially when there's no self-consciousness there, and they're allowed to kind of be in their own energy, in their own vibe, in their own naturalness, and expressing themselves as they want to. That's correct. Whether they know it or not, but within just them being the natural person that they are waiting for the correct call. And they may not be aware of this, they may be aware of this. And this is the call is specific to their unique life purpose. And that will allow them to show their true genius with the world. So by naturally following strategy and authority, they will start to recognize what calls that they can share their gift with. And then when they share their gifts with others in the correct way, that's when they're able to fulfill their purpose in this lifetime. It's not something that they necessarily have to go after, And as I've stated a couple of times, I'm going to reiterate this again. It is very important for a second line to follow strategy and authority in life, but also when it comes to knowing the correct call, what to invest their gifts and their talents into. Because for them, because that they are designed to fulfill the correct calls, and if they enter into a call that's not correct for them, they cannot fulfill whatever it is that they're asked of. If someone comes to them and sees their gifts and talents and they're like, hey, can you do this for me? Or whatever it is, can you use your gifts and talents in this way? And if they say yes, but really their inner authority is saying no, 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 no. And, from conditioning, from they feel obligated or whatever the scenario is, they say yes. It's probably not going to end well. Either they'll be disappointed, the other person will get disappointed or frustrated or angry or bitter, whatever energy type the two parties are. That's kind of what it's going to lead to, because it wasn't the correct call for that second line being to share their natural talents and gifts. So this is why it's important. But on the flip side, when they answer yes to a call that is in alignment for them to use their gifts and talents, oh boy, does the magic happen. All right. So when a second line fully allows themselves to be natural in the way that they are designed to be, in whatever area that they are naturally gifted in, and they follow strategy and authority to know where, who, when, how to pour their gifts into whatever the scenario is, that's where they're going to feel that sense of satisfaction or peace, or whatever your signature is and whatever energy type you are. Okay, hang on one second. Okay, let's move on to the third line, our martyr. All right. The third line, remember, so the third line is the last placement of the lower trigram. And fundamentally, the third line is here to figure out what does and does not work. And in the process of figuring that out, of what does and what does not work, they are here to let the rest of us know what works and what doesn't work. All right. So their process is all about trial and error. So remember how I said the third line in our house metaphor is like the staircase, right? So the staircase going up. So the third line is still very self-absorbed, but it is here to show the rest of us what works on the 3D material plane. Third line beings are really, really designed to live in this world, to be awake in this world, to live on the material plane. They are designed for it. They are made for it. When they are living correctly, they can have the best 3D experience when they are a correct third line being. So the third line is the most materialistic of all the lines because of this. And they are, like as I said, they are designed to live here. This is very natural for them. They are meant to figure out through trial and error what does and what does not work. And if anyone wants to know the truth about something, ask a third line being, because they will tell you. They will have tried it the hard way 15 different times until they figured out, this is the way you do that. Or they've tried, 15 different, printers, and they figure out, this is the master printer. This is the printer to end all printers. This is the best printer. I've tried them all. This one works. All the other ones, they're crap. That's what the third lines are here to do. They're here to let us know what does work and what does not work on this physical plane. For third line people, really for anyone, failure is not a bad thing. It is how we learn. But specifically for third lines, they are designed to fail because they are designed to figure out what doesn't work so that they can figure out what does work and share that with the rest of us. We need people like that. They're like our troubleshooters, right? Our third lines are our troubleshooters. They're like, okay, let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. Let's try it this way. If you have a third line child, let them try things. Let them figure it out for themselves. There may be a lot of falling down and failure, but the biggest thing is always asking them, okay, what lesson did you learn through this experience? They're experiential people. They need to experience it. You can tell them until they're blue in the face. Believe me, I have a third line child. From your own experience, what does and does not work, and they will not believe you. And they're like, no, I need to try it for myself. And that can, as a parent, that could be a little trying sometimes, but it is a genuine gift when they are operating correctly. And because they are designed to literally fail before they figure out what does work, they have a built-in resilience and natural tenacity. Their process is about discovery. That's what they're here to do. They're here to discover through the trial and error process. They are our scientists. So many scientists have a third line in their profile because they are here to go through the different trials and different errors and different experiments and different variations within each experiment to figure out what works and what doesn't work. And that is the beauty. And then they share that with us. So something to be very aware of with the third line. Third lines can be very easily shamed, especially as children, because more often than not, what they are doing will not work the first time. Again, a parent of a third line child. Instead of reprimanding them for their oopsies, ask them what they learned in the process. That is one of the biggest things. Like, okay, what did you learn? Like my son earlier today, him and his sister were arguing. And, I told him, I was like, look, you guys, if you keep calling each other, they were calling each other like stinky face or poopy face. I don't know, some kid thing. I mean, they're 3 and 6. So and I was like, okay, if I hear from either one of you calling each other another name or either one of you coming and tattling to me, you're both going to get a timeout and the TV's going to go off and you're going to have to sit there, Lo and behold, my third line son comes running up to me. My daughter called her stinky face or I don't know, something. And I was just like, oh my gosh. So, I have to hold up to my threats, if you will. I don't know if I'm not the best parent in the world. I do my best. I think we all do our best. But so TVs went off. They both had to sit there because I just needed to finish what I was doing more than anything. I'm like, Mom just needs a break and to finish what she's doing. And, so then afterwards I went in and talked to my son. I'm like, okay, what did you learn about this experience? And we had a conversation about that. So, okay. Okay. So the whole purpose of this trial and error process, this discovery process, and being able to share that with the rest of us is what this does for humanity at large, for the 3D material plane at large, is it provides a training ground and a space for evolution. That is the purpose. The third lines are usually the first to see new potential for change and mutation than any other line. And this is because when they're operating correctly, they literally bump into it. Like they bump into something new. They're like, oh, that's new. That's cool. Let's experiment with it. Let's see if it works. That's my third line father all the time. He loves all the new gadgets and experimenting with them. So third lines are literally designed to bump into things, either on a personality side of things kind of come to them. They're like, oh, let's check that out. Or if you have a third line design, which is more connected to your physical body, you bump into things all the time. Again, my third line son he's a 1-3 profile. So that 3 is associated with the physical body, and his physical body bumps into things all the time. I know this is true. I know this to be true. But when a third line is operating correctly and following strategy and authority, this does not always mean that things will be easy and work out. Remember, they are designed to see what does not work. But this is the beauty in them. This is their wisdom. Because once they figure out what does not work, they can stand up and let the rest of us know. They say, hey, this doesn't work. You don't want it, don't buy it, don't try it, whatever. And because of this, their keynote is the martyr, because so very often what happens is they take the heat for things when they are willing to have the resiliency and the tenacity to stand up and say, don't do that. It's not working. That doesn't work. Don't do it that way, or don't try that, or whatever it is. And sometimes people don't like that. Especially if it's a creator of something and all the third lines are saying, yeah, that doesn't work. So they can get a little bit of heat for all of that. But at the end of the day, there is so much value in their process because they have so much to share with the rest of us and help the rest of us evolve. So the big thing with the third lines is focusing on what is learned, not whether it worked out or not. So it's always the discovery and the learning process that's important. That's the takeaways. The third line models that transformation is possible for all of us through their own process, through the trial and error and figuring everything else. Since the third line is so material and really designed for this plane, it is important for them to stay grounded in their bodies. Their ultimate role is to challenge the falsehoods of the Maya, the earth, the 3D physical realm that we live in, and be the whistleblowers for things that don't work. Another keynote that you will see associated with this third line is bonds made and broken. And this is because they will be the first to see what does and does not work, either in the physical plane, in relationships, what have you. They are able to make bonds, learn from them, and then break those bonds if they find out that those bonds are no longer correct for them. This can be the theme in relationships. This can be a big thing in relationships, to figure out what relationships do and do not work for them. And some relationships just have a period of time in cycles, that bonds made and broken doesn't mean that third line beings can never be in a marriage. What it means is sometimes there's a cycle there, and just because maybe they need to have a few days in a little space and break that bond for a little bit of time, and then the relationship can heal and come back together. When operating correctly, there really is not such a thing as failure for this third line, because for them, it is truly only about discovery. So So our third lines are here to experience the full spectrum of what this 3D physical world has to offer. Okay, let's move up to the upper trigram. Line 4, our opportunists. So the fourth line is the foundation of the upper trigram. And just like the first line was the foundation for the lower trigram and the whole hexagram over large, but the difference in foundations here is, remember, the first line is very introspective, very in its own self and its own process. The fourth line is the foundation to start expressing the hexagram out to the world, right? So this is called the transpersonal process. So the mission of the fourth line is to share the message of the hexagram with their network, or their people, if you will, whom they have direct influence over. It resonates with the third line by building upon the third line, but rather than being so concerned about the foundation, they are more concerned like the physical foundation. They are more concerned with the foundation of human resources, making sure that the people in their network are taken care of, they're secure, and they have their own foundations. The fourth line is called the opportunists, and this is because it is deeply influential in their network of people, and their best opportunities will come from the people that they know. It is important for them to follow strategy and authority, to know which opportunities are correct for them, and for them to follow and use their inherent gifts in those opportunities. It is also important for them to follow strategy and authority when it comes to people, because it's going to be the correct people in their lives that will bring the correct opportunities. If you are surrounded by a bunch of incorrect people because you're not listening to your authority and you're just in these people, they're not going to bring you the correct opportunities, and that can be very detrimental to the fourth line. Your network as a fourth line being is key. I'm going to say that again. Your network, your group of people that you commonly associate with, is key for a fourth line being. Remember, this is transpersonal. This is the upper trigram. We are dealing more with people outside of us in this line. The quality of your life is in direct proportion to the quality of your network of people. And the correct network and relationships will also come through strategy and authority. So if you want to know who is correct for you and who is not, who to pour your time and energy into and who is not, this is going to be, you will determine this through strategy and authority. So really getting in tune with that for yourself. Even though they are designed to be connected to networks, they also need, the fourth lines still need their own time to process and rejuvenate, okay? They still need a little bit, like, take a step back, let me come into myself. The not self of a fourth line being can actually act more like very internal and not really go out into the world as they're more supposed to and deal with other people. So the fourth line's connection to the material plane is through correct people coming into their life. Okay, let's move on. 2 more lines to go and then we'll wrap it up. The fifth line. So in the 10th gate, the fifth line is known as the heretic. So the purpose of the fifth line is here to universalize the message of the hexagram. And it is not with an influential network like the fourth line. Remember, the fourth line is here to work with their network, work with their people, influence their people. That's not the fifth line. The fifth line is here to have influence over strangers, to have influence over the broad people, right? I always think of the fifth line as like the king or queen standing on the balcony, speaking out to their people, or the president, or whatever influential person is in that society kind of up on stage speaking, and then you have the people hearing that universalized message below. Okay. So the fifth lines are designed to offer practical solutions. Their auras invite people in that need solutions and and project that the fifth line has the potential to fix those solutions with their resources. You'll hear a lot when it comes to the fifth line people, or even just fifth lines in general in any hexagram, that there's a projection field there, that people will naturally project onto the fifth line, that they can be the savior, they can be the hero, what have you. And if the fifth line can't come to the table with practical solutions, their reputation can be hit hard. If they are not following strategy and authority, if someone comes to them with an issue or whatever, and their authority tells them, like, no, I don't have the skills to handle that, I don't want to handle that, whatever it is, and they still try to go handle it, maybe they have an open heart center and they're trying to prove themselves, it's not going to end well. They're going to ruin their reputation because they won't have what's fundamentally needed for them to fulfill the problem, to solve the problem. So for the fifth line, it's a must. I mean, it's every line, but for the fifth line, you have to follow strategy and authority to know which projections you can fulfill from others. Because again, if you try to fulfill a problem that you are not equipped or it is not correct for you to solve, it's going to take a toll on your reputation. And then instead of having a positive projection, most fifth lines, when they first meet someone, that person has a positive projection on them. They think positive things. They're like, oh my gosh, this person's amazing, yada, 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 yada. And if they're not able to fulfill that and they make commitments that they can't fulfill, then that projection is going to turn to negative. And very often you'll hear that referred to as being burned at the stake. They'll crash and burn, right? Within those people. So working with strategy and authority to making sure you're saying yes to the correct things and no to the incorrect things for you that are in alignment with you. Okay, because that fifth line, remember their reputation is big. They can have a lot of powerful influence over people, but it really depends on the success or failure of their solutions and how they meet the expectations that people had for them. They are here to provide things of real value and to step into a leadership role when needed and correct for them. This is also why another keynote for the fifth line can be the general, because it is the general that steps up, takes the lead, does what needs to be done, gets through the problem, gets through the crisis in a logical and practical way. And then once the crisis is over, they step back again, they take their reprieve, they take their breather, And they're like, okay, well, come to me again when there's another issue that I need to solve. And if I can solve it, I'll let you know. So that's the fifth line. All right, now on to the sixth line, the top of the hexagram. So what's interesting is the fifth line is more almost like the closing of the hexagram. Because remember how I said in our analogy, the sixth line is on the roof, right? It's more looking over everything and having a bird's eye view. So the sixth line stands alone from the other lines and really isn't even a part of the hexagram because it's more looking towards the next hexagram, or if we're talking about in the body graph chart, it's looking towards the gate on the other side of the channel, or even the entire circuit. So, in the body graph, we have channels, which the two gates make up a channel. And then beyond those channels are connected in certain ways to form what's called circuits. I'm not going to get into that fully right now because that's, again, beyond the scope of this teaching, but that's kind of more where the sixth line is. It's looking out. It's not even just looking out at in our house analogy. It's not even just looking at the street. It's looking at the entire neighborhood, So so it's very they kind of like sit above and kind of just like check it all out, and they're like, okay, and they're not like super participating. Six lines can feel a little aloof because they're not always here to actually like be in the nitty-gritty and participate. They're more here to be like, okay, well, that's interesting. And then ultimately their role in the keynote for the sixth line is the role model, because the correct a sixth line being functioning correctly is the role model for the rest of us of how we can truly live our lives as a unique person. So a sixth line actually has a 3-phase process in their life. So in the first 30-ish years before their Saturn return, so before Saturn comes back into the same gate that it was in when they were born, they operate as a third line and experience life in more of a trial and error process. So this phase of their life can be very chaotic. Many lessons are learned. And because the sixth line is not technically designed to be as resilient as a third line, and because they're not a true third line, right? They're not a true third line, but in that first phase of life up until about age, somewhere between 28 to 35, depending on how Saturn comes back in, because remember, we're talking elliptical orbits here. It can get a little hairy for them, and they're not technically equipped to live like that, even though that is how it works out for that first 30 years. And it can be, that first phase of their life can be very, very challenging, and it can leave them with a very pessimistic view of life. After their Saturn return and them going through their external discovery process, they're much more external at this point, and they're kind of like discovering the world and life and everything around them, and they have all these experiences so that they can ultimately gain wisdom, and through that wisdom become their unique self and the role model that they're here to be for the rest of us. Remember, they're not teachers, they're not universalizers, they're not influencers. They are role models. They are the people that are just, we look at it and be like, oh, wow, they've got it there. So let's talk about the second stage of life. The first stage was from birth to about 30 when they have their first Saturn return. Second stage of the sixth line process is called going on the roof phase. So this is when the sixth line kind of separates themselves from others. They can become even more aloof and really take a step back and observe the world for what it really is and how it really works. This is the time that the sixth line processes all of the lessons that it learned in that first phase of life, and they start to develop resources that they will later need in life in their third stage. So during the second stage, they start to settle into life and figure out the life that they really want to build for themselves, and they start tapping into their wisdom from these lessons that they learned. This is the time where this is when they take the time to build the foundation for the role model that they are here to embody. So in the third stage, this is also termed coming off the roof. This happens around 50 at their Chiron return. And Chiron is like, is it an asteroid or a comet? I can't quite remember. So I apologize for that. But it's when this comes around at about 50. So this is where the sixth line being reintegrates back into the world and shares its wisdom that it has gained and really truly blossoms into the role model that they are designed to be in this lifetime. They are not here to teach so much. Remember, I said that before. They're not really here to teach, but to simply be who they are, to simply be in their energy, to simply be their unique self and inspire the rest of us to be our unique self. When they come off the roof and they're more their authentic self, they come back into a more optimistic view of life. This is a very transitional time in their life, and it is of utmost importance that they know how to work with and follow their strategy and authority. An awake sixth line being is a vision to witness because they are truly, truly role models of what living life as a unique being looks like and fulfilling their purpose. There's two quotes that I really want to share with you that I feel encompass the power of a healthy sixth line being. So this first one is from Ra. Every sixth line being carries the magic of the future. It carries the magic of what is possible for a human being. What's possible for any human being if they're fortunate enough in this life to come in contact with this knowledge and they get to experiment with and see it for themselves, all the beauties that it holds. And then the second one that I want to share is from Linda Burnell, who founded the International Human Design School. And one of the places that you can get analysis certification through, she worked with Uru Hu very closely for very many years. So humanity is evolving away from the universalizing savior general fifth line towards the sixth line process of self-leadership and self-mastery based in self-acceptance and self-awareness. So one last note, that is the end for our sixth line, but something that I want to kind of wrap all this up in, and then this will be the close for our introduction video of profiles. But a last note I want to leave you with. We are 9-center beings and are designed to develop more slowly than 7-center beings. So 7-center beings had a Saturnian life cycle, which means that most of them were only designed to live for about 30 years. I mean, think about all of ancient civilization, of time, up until like this 81, when we transitioned from 7-center beings to 9-center beings. You know, like we had a much shorter lifespan. People didn't live as long for many, many reasons. The vehicle wasn't designed to. There was more wars. We had less modern medicine to deal with acute injuries. We didn't have as much awareness around how to take care of our physical bodies. There were many layers as to why we didn't have very long lifespans. And as 9-centered beings, we have a Uranian cycle. So we follow the cycle of Uranus, which is an 84-year orbit. So the average lifespan, and even go like Google it, the average lifespan now is about 84 years. Crazy. And that is what 9-center beings are here to live, roughly 84 years, give and take. There's always both ends of the spectrum there, but the average is 84 years. And something to keep in mind, Ra always says, you don't need to know what you actually want to do with your life until you're about 40. because it takes you, you don't really know what you want to do until about your midlife. And it's always makes me sad how our society, I think we're starting to condition away from this as we evolve, but our society, I remember when I was a kid, like, oh, what do you want to be when you grow up? Or even like, what do you want to go to college for? This, that, or the other thing. And how many people have gotten college degrees in something and they don't use that college degree at all. They do something completely different in their lives. And that's because we are literally designed to age slower than our predecessors, the severed center beings. We are designed to age slower. That's the beauty of being aware of that 6-line process, whether you are a 6-line being or not in your profile. We still all have that energy a little bit, at least around us and a little bit in us. So realizing that, it's okay if you don't know what you want to do and you're still trying to figure yourself out when you're in your 20s and 30s and even 40s, especially if you have a lot of conditioning. Like, give yourself grace and have patience. Just keep following strategy and authority, and it will guide you, because that's all you really need to know. The rest of this stuff can just be confirmation to how you've always felt, but you have been conditioned not to live that way. That has been the case for me personally. And just to really learn more about yourself, especially if you're a generator, manifesting generator, you are really here to learn about yourself. So if you are younger than 40 and you have no idea what you want to do with your life still, it's okay. Don't stress over it. If you're older than 40 and you still don't know what you want to do with your life, that's okay too. Work on your deconditioning and things will start to unfold. All right. I will catch you in the next video. Make sure to at least watch your own profile video. And if you bought the bundle, you can watch all 12 videos of all the 12 different profiles. And if you just bought your own, go watch your own. I will catch you in the next video. Bye for now.